A city in change. Can you keep up? We track all the local stories that impact you. Our Metro dissected in 30 minutes or less. Straight ahead on Week in Review.
Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Bob and Marlise Gorley, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, the Courtney S. Turner Charitable Trust, John H. Mize and Bank of America N.A. co-trustees, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome everyone, I'm Nick Haynes. Someone asked me in the cereal aisle of Price Chopper this week, do I ever worry we won't have enough to talk about on this program? Well, let me tell you. My biggest worry is how we get to fit it all in less than 30 minutes. We're going to try. Checking in with us this week is 41 Action news reporter and anchor Dia Wall, Mary Sanchez from the Tribune News Service, KMBC 9 chief political reporter Michael Mahoney, and from KCWA News, Steve Kraske. The final public hearing got underway this week on whether Kansas City should erase the name J.C. Nichols from one of its most iconic fountains. The park board also weighing up whether to remove the pioneering developer's name from one of the Country Club Plaza's main thoroughfares. At issue now is Nichols' legacy as the architect of racial covenants that blocked people of color from living in his housing developments. At the first town hall, the vast majority of speakers were in favor of removing Nichols' name from the public square. If there was opposition to that idea, few felt comfortable expressing it. Dia Wall, did that change this week?
I'm not sure. This has bubbled up a few times in the past few years, whether or not J.C. Nichols is worthy of having his name displayed throughout Kansas City because of its history. The kind of crux of the supporters and the opponents is really his history is poor. We talked about the racially restrictive covenants, but then there are also people who say we shouldn't rewrite history. This is still someone who is iconic to Kansas City. But I will say this is the most energy and support that I've seen for the idea in the time I've been here in Kansas City.
There's one thing to say we want to remove his name, Steve. The other thing is, how is there consensus on what it should be named? I see one of the suggestions is the Dream Fountain, but there may not be full support for changing that name or even changing the name J.C. Nichols Parkway to Martin Luther King Parkway.
Yeah, right, Nick. You know, my sense is there's a pretty strong consensus over removing J.C. Nichols' name. I think most people speaking to the Parks Board, what you're hearing in the community is that the time has come to take J.C. Nichols' name off that fountain. The tougher nut to crack here is what do you rename it? And do you rename a street in the plaza after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? The Black ministers have come out pretty strongly against that idea, saying the street's not big enough, grand enough, long enough to merit placing Dr. King's name on it. Chris Good, the Parks Commissioner, has the idea of renaming the fountain after the Dream Fountain after Dr. King. That name seems to have some resonance with me and with others as well. So the tough nut here, Nick, is where do you go after you take J.C. Nichols' name off the fountain?
And what happens now, Michael? I seem to be very confused about this. I see some stories that say the Parks Board will take this up at their meeting next week. And yet I saw a story on Channel 9 that says the Parks Board is going to continue to gather feedback until July the 9th.
Yeah, it is confusing. I agree with Steve on this, that there does seem to be a decided movement here to change the name of that parkway and the fountain. I think there is a consensus over the Dream Fountain, referring back, as Steve mentioned, to King's famous speech. As far as erasing J.C. Nichols' history, I don't buy that at all. Nichols is part of Kansas City, and changing the name of that parkway or that fountain does not remove that. What it does is address a poor part of his legacy. People will still know who J.C. Nichols is and who his son was in terms of the development of Kansas City. I look for them to make a change. They may take a little bit more public comment on it. I don't think this will go to a public vote. I think this is going to happen before Labor Day.
Mary, you know, in the meantime, UMKC also announcing a task force to consider a possible renaming of the university's main library building. Does it make a difference that the Miller-Nichols Library is actually named after the developer's son?
I think it should, and that's part of where we are as a city, is that on all these issues is, you know, you want to inform people better. You want people to understand this broader history. And that frankly goes back to even the frustration that some of the ministers have right now is that people still keep leaning to the I have a dream version of Martin Luther King. And the whole reason why they wanted Paseo to begin with was because it spoke to the economic development of the African American community here. And even, the Nichols name, it speaks to people's lack of understanding that those housing covenants and barring people from being able to move forward in their lives with home equity still plays out today. So that's what we need to do is, however we solve this, is make sure that the lessons aren't lost in the learning.
How far do we go with that, though, Mary? I see, one of the largest real estate companies in Kansas City is Reese Nichols Real Estate. Do we change that name, too? That's part of that legacy.
Well, and that's the question. I mean, frankly, I don't think that it is up to, me, just one person. So I do think these conversations are good. I absolutely applaud that. And you will have a lot of different views. You're not going to ever have one firm consensus. I don't think that it does help to actually completely, as people say, erase. And I think Mike is right. That history is there. It's more, how do we understand it and how do we place it in context for today?
Michael.
The interesting thing about this debate is the fact that it's lost on the fact that it's not just, Nick, the Paseo or Nichols Parkway. There are several other choices that were kicked around by a commission about this. I still think 63rd Street, which is a dull name for a street, but it's a street that's a major artery in this town, and it stretches from the east to the west end of it. I think that would be an important place to honor Dr. King if they're going to do it with a street.
Important to note, though, the reason the Paseo has been kind of flip-flopped is because voters, people in the community were not engaged. So
Right.
whatever happens from this point forward, I agree with you guys. I think the time has come. I think the energy and support is there. There definitely needs to be a campaign of listening.
Are there other monuments and statues also now being reevaluated in Kansas City, Steve Kraske, or is it the concentration still on the J.C. Nichols fountain?
Well, I think the main focus clearly is on the J.C. Nichols fountain, Nick, but there are conversations going on about the name of Jackson County after Andrew Jackson, of course, which you're seeing some name changing going on around the country in connection with that presidency and what he represents. So no question, those things are being considered. Is our community ready to make that change and change the name of our county? I don't think so, Nick. I think the big push is going to be on this fountain for a while.
Okay, Michael.
Two things very, very quickly. Number one, the collapse of Andrew Jackson's legacy nationally has been stunning. It's been underway for about 10 years. Secondly, at the City Hall rally for the Black Lives Matter protest on the 5th of June, I think, Quentin Lucas was very outspoken and criticized Jackson's legacy. I think he called him an awful president or one of the worst. And the other thing is that, and this is not a new idea by any stretch of the imagination, there's been a lot of talk through the years. Mary, you know this, Steve, you know this, Dia, you know this as well, that people were thinking, hey, maybe the name of this county ought to be Truman County. I look for that to come back up.
That's interesting.
It's hard to keep up with the latest developments involving the pandemic and the protest movement, but one trend we're also closely following this week involves our school districts. Will Kansas City area school districts eliminate police resource officers from their buildings? Denver, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, and a slew of other school boards in cities around the country voting to end contracts with local police departments. Now, the ACLU of Missouri also urging local districts to do the same. They've sent a letter to 9 area administrators encouraging them to use the money instead on hiring more social workers and counselors. Is there any evidence this idea is getting traction here, Dia Wall?
No, not to this point. I've talked to a few superintendents in the area, and no, I don't necessarily believe there's a lot of appetite for that. I know there's a lot of talk about defunding or redistributing, right, some of the resources that are given to police departments across the country, but leadership here from the mayor on down, there doesn't really seem to be a lot of support for that idea. So I think Kansas City has been pretty vocal from what I've heard, even when I was out covering the protests. They like their police department. They want local control for sure, but they definitely want to kind of reconfigure, re-engineer what that role looks like. I don't think there's a huge appetite to get rid of them right now.
Steve.
I think Dee is absolutely right, but I also would point out that in this time, as more and more people begin to recognize the scourge of mental health on our children, that the idea of bringing social workers into the schools where they could play a much more active role with so many more students who are struggling with these issues is a pretty profound one that should be looked at. Dee is right. It's probably too soon, but it's worth a conversation.
It's interesting, Michael Mahoney, that I haven't seen Mark Bedell, the head of the Kansas City, Missouri School District, talk about or take a public stand on this week. But he is talking about systemic racism, and it involves something else, though. And he talks about the systemic racism of those tax giveaways going on at City Hall that he says is depriving the most impoverished students in our entire community of millions of dollars for a good education. How much traction is that issue getting, and is City Hall listening to that?
It's going to get a lot of traction, and this is, in education circles, at least, the worst kept secret in Kansas City about the frustration of school districts and their administrators always being on the short end of the stick when it comes to tax and economic development incentives. And I think that Bedell, who was about as strident as I've seen him, save for his opposition for the Sly James pre-K kindergarten program a little while ago, is really taking the opportunity to make this case right now. And I want to double back just really quickly on something that Dia said, mentioning local control. One of the interesting late developments this week is Mayor Lucas calling to put a question on the ballot in November about whether or not Kansas Cityans want local control of the department, and that won't settle things, but he would use that, if it's an overwhelming vote for local control, as a cudgel down at the state legislature to get them to give Kansas City local control during the 21 session.
Okay, let's continue then about the police for a moment, because while there's an effort across the country right now to downsize the role of police, ironically, Kansas City is considering giving them a new assignment, taking over policing at KCI. Mayor Quinton Lucas is the co-sponsor of a proposal to replace airport security with officers from the Kansas City Police Department. Why? And given all the pushback against police, why now?
It's money.
Money. Okay, Mary.
You know, I mean, and he's being open and honest about that. I mean, the city is looking at a lot of tax-based loss, which ties back to the issues with the school district, and it can save some money to put those officers. There's already some KCPD officers working up there, but it's a cost.
But why is it then that the aviation director, Michael Mahoney, says that, hey, the airport security earn a lot less than Kansas City, Missouri police officers? This could cost us $3 to $7 million more a year.
Well, the fact that they earn a lot less, I think, at least parenthetically, speaks to the fact that maybe the force isn't as efficient or as strong as it ought to be. Now, folks up there may push back on that. Pat Klein's resistance to this, I also think, deals a little bit with his ability to influence and control the airport police versus the Kansas City police. And the other thing that Mary just brought up is, you know, it is, in fact, duplication of services. There is not much the airport police do that the Kansas City police cannot do.
But I also think one thing you want to also consider with this, it goes back to accountability, right? Who does the buck stop with? And I think part of the mayor's office wanting to push for this is that they'll be under the same umbrella when we're talking about all these reforms when it comes to KCP. Yeah. Then airport police will fall under that as well.
But isn't this a slap in the face to all of those security officers currently at the airport, Steve?
No, I don't think it is at all. I think Mary is absolutely spot on here. This is all about money, Nick. You can use ticket fees that passengers pay to pay for your police officers up at the airport if, in fact, you decide to go to Kansas City, Missouri. And you can save money as a result because we're looking at big budget cuts to the police, maybe the loss of dozens of officers who might be laid off because the city simply doesn't have the money in the wake of a pandemic. You can pick up a bunch of money, not only for those officers, but for the administrators, the captains and sergeants who oversee them if you go this new route.
I'm enjoying seeing you disagree vehemently on screen there, Michael.
I don't think, Nick and Steve, I don't think they've got the guts to cut the cops. Not now. Even with the redeploy the police or the defund the police movement, this is a guy that campaigned essentially on let's make Kansas City safer, let's drop the murder rate. And given everything that's going on, I don't think they got the guts to cut the cops.
Should you be arrested for possessing marijuana? The Kansas City mayor says no. He's introduced a new ordinance that's just been debated and approved by a council committee that will strip pot possession from city codes. Mayor Lucas says blacks are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession, despite roughly equal usage rates as whites. Now, just because you propose something doesn't mean it's going to happen. In the past, the police have expressed concerns about liberalizing pot laws. Has the protest movement had a chilling effect, though, on the police's willingness to speak out against this change, dear?
I think they have bigger fish to fry. Medical marijuana is already legal in the state of Missouri. There's huge support, not only in our community, but across the country for legalizing even recreational marijuana. So I think they'd rather see officers have, I think they said, more positive interactions with the community. It just feels like this is a waste of time, particularly when we're looking at some pretty significant homicide numbers.
Mary.
Absolutely. Dia's right. I mean, there's just, if you're going to be someone that's going to argue against this, you're going to almost sound like you're back in the reefer madness zone with, the way that film flick used to be. The society has shifted on this, and it is true. I mean, pot usage is so widespread across all different races, economic sectors, and it has always put police officers in a role where they're harassing people. And that is exactly where we don't want to be right now. And I do think that's a consensus that's occurring within law enforcement as well as within the community.
Now, speaking of just because you propose something doesn't mean it'll happen, the mayor announcing plans to institute a residency requirement and a salary cap on the heads of any agency, actually, in Kansas City that gets more than 20% of their revenue from the city. Now, what part of the justice movement is this intended to address, Michael Mahoney?
I don't think it has anything to do with the justice movement per se, Nick. I think it has a lot more to do, to double back again to what Mary was talking about, in terms of money and the dire straits of the budget. They're going to be looking at every nickel and every dime because the sales tax is down, the earnings tax is down. They're in a bite.
But who would actually be a part of this? I mean, I see also on that, it's not just organizations and agencies, it could be businesses who get more than 20%. How many are we talking about here, and who would actually be caught up in this?
Well, some bigger ones, Nick. Visit KC, Port KC, the Economic Development Corporation of Kansas City, the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority. There are some big ones there, and clearly some outsized salaries here.
You can make the justice argument, because when the budgets are this tight, how do you fairly make your cuts? And that is where you start looking at these vast disparities of how people are paid. And, is it fair that one person earns so much more than, say, the people underneath them? It's almost the same argument that you have within private businesses about the paid packages of CEOs.
With the pandemic and now protests dominating news coverage, it's become tough for candidates running for local office to get any attention. Even the candidates running for U.S. Senate in Kansas struggling to get noticed. The leading Republicans debated this week in Wichita. But did anyone watch or pay any attention? The debate concentrated on the response to COVID-19. With an uptick in virus cases, they were pushed on their position on face masks.
We have a free country. People ought to have a right to wear a mask if they want to. If they don't want to wear a mask, they shouldn't have to wear a mask.
I think a little Kansas common sense goes a long ways, like most things, and we'll leave it there.
We should have the freedom to make the choice, and I don't like the mask shaming that is going on the left. But I have learned, by the way, that if I go participate in a riot, I can not wear a mask and I won't have any risk at all from COVID. You've learned this, right?
Chris Kobach, Dave Lindstrom, and Roger Marshall on stage. I noticed Bob Hamilton of Bob Hamilton Plumbing fame wasn't on the stage. Did they not invite him? Did he depart the race? Or he didn't want to take part?
Well, he was invited, Nick, but he said he had a family wedding to attend to, although I assume the wedding's on the weekend. Why he couldn't show up on a Wednesday night, I don't know. He's not considered to be a very good debater. In the first forum he showed up at, Mike, he stumbled badly. So I think it's fair to say that Bob Hamilton was probably skirting this one.
It's interesting, though. You may say he's not a great debater, but yet, I mean, he's got tons of ads. I think I see more ads for him right now than any of the other candidates. Here's one here.
I am a pro-life father of 12, NRA conservative.
Businessman Bob Hamilton, put looters behind bars, stop radicals from defunding the police, and call out the liberal media for stoking it all.
I'm Bob Hamilton. I approve this message because this is America. It's time to act like it.
Now, as you can see, there's a push to be the most conservative candidate in this race. If you like President Trump, which candidate would best align with his vision, Steve?
You know, they all argue they are the ones closest to Trump, Nick, and trying to separate these 3 or 4 leading candidates on that metric would be pretty difficult.
Steve's exactly right on this. They have a competition going about who can snuggle up to the president the tightest, and that will continue through the rest of the primary here. To go back to the dynamics of this thing, this debate on Wednesday night clearly showed that Chris Kobach believes that Roger Marshall is leading this race because Kobach was constantly on the attack going after Marshall. It's a sign that people watch for who's catching the flack. That's generally the person that they're trying to take down. And the difficulty is hardly anybody who's seen these things.
But dear, don't you think, though, that there is very little opportunity for any of these candidates, for any race right now, to get much traction when we have 2 major crises hitting at the same time, with the pandemic and the protest movement currently taking place? Yes
and no. I think surprisingly, coronavirus kind of came in like a wrecking ball, as they say, and all of the focus and attention has been on that. We're months away from a general election in November. And so I think that the attention is going to start to shift. I think it's still early for the race in Kansas.
Steve Kraske.
You know, in more than 30 years of covering politics, Nick, I've never seen people paying so little attention to politics. Dee is right. That'll shift at some point. But by the way, did you know there was a race for the presidency of the country on the ballot this fall, too? It just, no one's paying attention right now because so much else is going on.
Guess what? Kansas City's largest amusement park is finally reopened this week. We're talking about Worlds of Fun. If you're thinking about going, please know you're going to have to register online first. You're going to have a temperature check. And yes, face masks are mandatory for all visitors. Will it be hard to ride the Patriot or the Timberwolf in a face mask, dear?
You know what? It doesn't really matter because you got to wear it. Okay, here's the deal. All of the people who are talking so tough, even the candidates right at the debate, are talking about the masks and we shouldn't be forced to. The very political leaders 4, 6, 8 weeks ago who were talking so tough are dealing with record numbers of cases. And the people who are hospitalized with this virus are staying steady, right? So I think that feelings aside, it doesn't matter. Get the mask.
It's becoming tough, though, for organizations and companies to navigate that. Ask that of AMC, which got considerable public pushback when they just announced masks will be optional when theaters reopen next month. Then within hours of the decision, the company walks back the policy, saying face masks are now mandatory. Ironically, an AMC spokesperson says they didn't want to require masks because they didn't want to be drawn into a political controversy. Is there a lesson here for companies or organizations, Steve?
Well, I think the lesson is you better require a mask if you're going to expect people to come out in public, at least for the short being. Dee is right. Whether you like it or not, you're going to have to wear a mask. Get used to it, folks.
Now, when you put a program like this together every week, you can't get to every big story hitting the headlines. What was the big story we missed? A spate of killings pushes the Kansas City homicide rate up 40% on this time last year. The woman in charge of unemployment benefits in Kansas loses her own job. Patrick Mahomes getting national attention as he joins LeBron James in forming a new group to promote voter registration in black communities. A clash in Branson makes national news as rival protest groups descend on a store selling Confederate merchandise.
I will teach my grandkids to hate you.
Amtrak announces it's eliminating daily train service to Kansas City. T-Mobile lays off more than 200 Sprint workers in Overland Park. Cerner cuts 100 jobs. And for the first time in its 70-year history, there will be no shows this summer at Starlight, the outdoor theater giving it up until next year. Did you pick one of those stories, Mary Sanchez, or something completely different?
Well, I would say an offshoot of those stories. I mean, the layoffs are big, and it's everything that is culminating together right now. There's also a lot going on within Midtown Kansas City, frankly, where some restaurants are having to reclose because they share service workers that, people back in front end staff. And when one tests positive, 3 restaurants close. So I think that sort of just slow motion of what's occurring and its impact on people's lives and their economics is just massive.
Michael Mahoney.
It's a tie. Number one, the crime wave in Kansas City and the surge there, and then the resignation of the Labor Secretary Garcia in Kansas. Laura Kelly has been getting relatively good marks for how she's handled this, but the unemployment claim situation there has not been handled well at all, and it should have cost her a job, and it did.
Dia Wall.
It's a split for me. I have to agree with Mary. The fact that all of these restaurants are now shutting their doors again, going back to curbside or delivery only, is really stunning because the hospitality industry has been hit so hard by this. I think it speaks to the fact that we are not out of the woods when it comes to this virus. We may have some fatigue, but we got to hang in there. Number 2 is the homicide rate is ticking up. As we confront this conversation about policing and race and interactions with the community and what role KCPD needs to play in our community, they do have a wild portion of the Kansas City budget. And I think how we navigate trying to get crime under control, pay police, but still trim is going to be very fascinating to watch.
Steve Kraske.
It's the homicide rate, Nick. Mayor Lucas wanted to keep the number of homicides in this town to 100 for the entirety of 2020. We might hit 100 before the year's halfway over, Nick. That's how out of control it is right now.
And on that, we will say the week in Kansas City has been reviewed. And we could not have done it without Dia Wall from 41 Action News, Mary Sanchez from the Tribune News Service, Channel 9's Michael Mahoney, and updating you on the news of the day weekday mornings at 9 on KCUR Radio, Steve Kraske. And I'm Nick Haynes from all of us here at KCPT. Keep calm and carry on.